also am a big believer that, in recessions or down economies or down times, that's when the real innovators and the creative people, see an opportunity and do something a little bit different, right? So I'm curious. I mean, again, Chris, you have a perspective in the entertainment space and in the creative space. How are you seeing? You talked about some of the examples there with farming and other things, but when you think about so the more traditional forms of creativity, music and art, and that's usually one of the natural resources that we have. How do you see that playing a role, for Caribbean communities, for entrepreneurs even, kind of looking forward? Into the end of this year and next year?
I think that when we look at entrepreneurship, the first question we have to have is this economically viable? Is it fiscally sustainable? And we need to really examine our creative industries and our culture industries, because for a very long time, I would say probably since the dawn of our human existence here in Trinidad, a lot of those creative initiatives and cultural initiatives have been propped by the government. So when you look at the roots of it, when you look at the base of it, when you look at the foundation of it, you ask yourself, is this something that is actually fiscally sustainable, and how can we take these industries and really make them financially viable? How can we make Carnival a financially viable industry? How can we make music production a financially viable industry? How can we make tourism a financially viable industry? And all of these are sustainability questions. And we would have to examine the entire value chain in terms of looking at the consumer aspect of Carnival entrepreneurship, for instance. So
right.
How much of that money is staying in Trinidad? How much of that money is going back to overseas factories? How much of that money is going into acquiring goods and services that we could potentially produce locally? Is there economic viability in producing those goods and services locally? Is there economic viability in producing those goods and services for export? So we need to really take a deep look at our culture industries and our creative industries, and first of all determine if they are viable, and how can we make them viable, or how can we continue to grow their economic viability.
Right. Do you see pockets of opportunity from your lens, from the kinds of things that you've done, where you're like, if someone with the right approach can go in that space or this space or do this thing and blow up?
There's pockets of opportunity everywhere. I think I looked at agriculture, and I think that there's massive opportunity in this country for agriculture, for sustainable agriculture. There's no way that we should be importing eggs or importing bananas or any of these staple foods that we could be producing locally. And that is not a criticism, that is simply an observation. So you look at the creative industry and you think, okay, maybe at scale, we may not be able to compete with the prices of manufacturing in China, but how many clothing factories and seamstresses and so on do we have locally, and how can we formalize that industry so that we can use some of our local resources to offset the costs associated with not just shipping and tariffs and so on, but the fact that every time we have to acquire goods and services from overseas, that is a strain on our foreign exchange. So you have a bunch of people coming from New York to play transport, but if you're going to turn around and take that same US dollar and turn around and have to give it to a guy who owns a factory in China, then we have to really consider if that's sustainable. And again, it really comes down to the base definition of sustainability, which is that we produce what we consume, and it becomes cyclical. And as it is right now, we don't necessarily have a cyclical economy when it comes to our culture industries or our agriculture industry, etc., etc. So those are things that we need to really take a strong look at.
And certainly our point of reference from the bank, is not to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, because there are 17 sustainable development goals that have been established. And so I think if people are aware of what those goals are, then people can look to see, where they can play a role in the accomplishment of any of those goals. And I heard Chris talking about, I think what he called the panic famine, and certainly zero hunger, and greater use of the land, are two of the sustainable development goals. And so if people are aware, as I said, of what these goals are, right, they can certainly then see what kind of role that they can play to accomplish the sustainability. So to go more directly to your question, I'm seeing a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurship, that could actually, right, satisfy some of these sustainable development goals. And so, I mean, you have things such as recycling opportunities. That's a sustainable development goal. I mean, Chris referred to the farming, right? And so therefore zero hunger is one of the goals. You have things like education, and improving the quality of education. That's a possible role that people can play in. And what we need now is entrepreneurs. And the question about fiscal sustainability or financial sustainability, that's important because people have to live to be able to accomplish it. But we probably also have to redefine exactly what is that threshold for financial sustainability. And if you look at sustainability as just not being for today, but also for tomorrow and for your children and for your grandchildren, then you realize that the value proposition might be a little bit different. If you look at it through that lens. But there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, we are seeing it. We are seeing the opportunities. What we're not seeing is as many people getting involved in those opportunities.
Sure. I mean, the guys at Chef Made are doing something like 12,000 meals a month. BP is doing great across the region, even given the fact that we don't even have, digital remittance legislation in place in this country. Drop is doing a great job of, going into the ride share and the resource sharing space. So I think that we have a number of market leaders who are doing quite well, particularly given the tense economic environment and the high cost of doing business.
Great. And Nigel, any thoughts from you? And you might have perspective at even both the large and the small and medium, but any standing out for you that you've been seeing?
I mean, there are a couple, one in Trinidad and one overseas. I mean, one of the entities, and I don't know if you call it, it probably might be more medium, right, with potential to be much larger if you would like to be. But we're Sasha Cosmetics. And what Sasha has been able to do, as a local manufacturer of cosmetics, and how they've been able to position their brands, right? I think internationally. I think that could certainly be an example for people, right, across the region. And the other one would be a fish company, in Ghana. I don't know how familiar you are with the geography of Africa, but I mean, right adjacent to Ghana is a landlocked country called Burkina Faso. And there is this fish company, right? I can't remember the name, unfortunately, right now, who are probably the largest processor of fish, right? Certainly in the African region, if not the world, And what they're doing is really taking the sea resources which Ghana has, and transforming that into finished products for on sale in Burkina Faso, who doesn't have any access to the sea, at least not directly. And the first time when I heard about their factory. I haven't actually visited, but one of my colleagues did. When I heard about it, it was the scale of it and the imagination and coming up with what they were doing with the resource, was what struck me. And they're doing it in a sustainable manner. And that I think is what was also very important about what they were doing. They weren't just kind of extracting the marine life, They were doing it in a sustainable manner. I mean, those two stood out to me when I first thought about this question.